Okay, today we are going to be talking about the fundamentals of muscle growth. So let's get started with the 4 ways muscle actually grows. Number 1, cellular swelling. Number 2, mechanical tension. Number 3, mechanical trauma. And number 4, metabolic stress. Now let's dive into these individually. What is cellular swelling? Cellular swelling is basically the sciencey term for the pump. Your muscle cells sense that swelling as a threat and basically say, I have to grow or die. So they restructure themselves and get bigger in the process. Then comes mechanical tension. This is amplifying the tension, recruiting the larger and more powerful muscle fibers. It's usually depicted by rep ranges in around about the 5 to 8 rep range, and rest breaks need to be longer, normally between 3 to 5 minutes in order to maximize mechanical load. Shorter rest periods for this given rep range means you'll not properly recover from set to set, leading to diminishing returns. This is neuromuscular recovery as well as physical. Then comes mechanical trauma. This is where you focus more on the eccentric portion of the lift, like the lowering phase in the bench press, for example. Things like forced eccentrics, negative reps, or anytime you work muscles in a new range of motion. Layman's terms, this is when you are basically destroying the muscle. This will obviously lead you to requiring a lot more recovery time, so it can't be done too often, or it will lead to acute overtraining. Then there's metabolic stress. This refers to the burning sensation you probably often experience when you train. It's another name for lactic acid buildup. Taking shorter rest periods, 60 seconds or less, or removing them completely like in supersets, monster sets, cluster training, and drop sets, just to name a few, can enhance metabolic stress. But like mechanical trauma, doing too much of this will lead to burnout, lacking recovery, and most likely injury. So the key to utilizing these principles for muscle building is to know when to use them, how long to use them for, and what to do in between these phases for maximum recovery and minimizing the risk of overtraining and injury. With my clients, I usually fluctuate between accumulation phases and intensification phases. Intensification phases are more strength-based, and we will predominantly use mechanical tension and mechanical trauma. Whereas in an accumulation phase, we will utilize cellular swelling and metabolic stress as the focus is on higher volume. So now I've gone through the key principles of muscle growth. Let's talk about the other essentials you need to incorporate for optimal muscle growth, because without these, the rest is useless. So let's talk about nutrition. You've probably heard it, but you really do need to be in a calorie surplus if you're going to optimize muscle growth. Now, the actual amount of calories you need will obviously vary from person to person, but I recommend starting in around about a 5% calorie surplus based on your total daily energy expenditure, your TDEE. For a natural athlete, and yes, I'm talking about general population here too, you should aim to gain around 0.2 to 0.4% of your total body weight per week, or around about 1 pound every 2 to 3 weeks. This way, you'll be ensuring that the weight gained is predominantly from muscle rather than unnecessary body fat. Trying to follow a dirty bulk, eating as much as you can, regardless of whether you put on body fat or not, will just lead to a lot of fat gain, and also potentially drive down your motivation to train, as you'll look like a bag of potatoes and struggle to walk up the stairs without getting out of breath. Remember, health and longevity are always the priority. And in terms of macros, set your protein at around 2 to 2.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, and I would really advise against a low carbohydrate diet. Instead, set your fat to around about 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, and carbs can make up the rest. Now let's talk about recovery. I always say you can train as hard as you want, as long as you can recover from it. Recovery is a crucial part to muscle building and optimizing results in general. The main factors that will negatively affect recovery are 1, sleep. Always aim for 8 hours of good quality sleep per night. I used to say 6 to 7 hours would suffice, but if we are talking about optimizing here, recent discussions with experts has really clarified that 8 hours is that critical number. Remember, poor sleep is a big cause of low testosterone levels, which can be really problematic for males and females, especially when trying to optimize muscle gain. So number 2 is nutrition. We've already spoken a little bit about this, but your diet will have a big part to play in how well you recover. I'm not going to go into supplements on this video, but you want to make sure you're eating a diet high in protein, good quality carbohydrates, a range of fat sources, prioritizing omega-3s, but also ensuring you're getting saturated fats in there too. And at least 3 to 4 servings of green leafy vegetables, which can not only help with recovery, but can also reduce the amount of excessive estrogen in the body. Now, number 3 would be be rest days. Rest days are crucial, and the amount of rest days you need will be dictated by the type of program you're on. For example, accumulation phases, volume focus phases. You can generally get away with fewer rest days as you're able to split the workouts into single muscle groups and can ensure 48 hours recovery between training the same muscle group. With intensification phases, strength-based phases, rest days are generally more frequent, as a lot of the splits are full body routines, where you're essentially training each body part every workout. Plus, it takes longer for your neuromuscular system to recover compared to your muscular system. And as intensification phases are more taxing on your neuromuscular system, they require more rest between sets and more rest days in general. Number 4 are deloads and periodization. Deloads are just weeks of training where you decrease the intensity and/or volume of your training. A common method is to simply keep the same rep scheme but cut the load by 50%. I generally prefer to structure my clients' deloads to take a deload from the previous, focus on the last training phase. For example, if they've just completed a 4-week volume phase, I would program an intensity-focused deload with a drop in weights before potentially moving into another volume phase or a 6 to 8 week intensification strength-focused phase. So this leads us nicely into periodization, which is pretty much what I just talked about. Periodization refers to the method of altering the load and intensity of your training throughout the training cycle. You have microcycles, which generally last for a week, mesocycles, which can last between 4 to 12 weeks, and macrocycles, which generally refers to a full year of training. These are generally broken down into mesocycles, where the individual would cycle between training stimulus to optimize progress and mitigate fatigue. So that's a lot of information, and I hope it all makes sense, as if you are even a little bit clearer after watching this than you were before about the points you need to focus on to optimize muscle growth, then my job is done. And look, if you're not really seeing results with your training and you feel a little bit lost in terms of how to structure your training for optimal results, just shoot me a DM in my socials and I'll help you set out an action plan to get you from where you are now to where you want to be in the next 3 to 6 months. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I really hope to hear from you soon.